Big deal. We've known Jonathan for many, many years. He's done so much work in our community. We love him dearly, and it's really very special today to have him as our honoree. We're really thrilled. You'll hear more about all this in a few minutes. I'm going to introduce Julie Marston, our Executive Director, and she's going to take it from here. So thank you again for coming and for your support.
Don't be confused. You can still like Tito Vodka and support Jonathan Scott and Victory Burger. It's a bit ironic, I know. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks to Red Inn Host Committee. I have the incredible honor of working with an amazing board of directors. Board members, if you could just raise your hand so we know who you are. A couple people out there. And up here, Sylvia, our president, as well as John Good. And also an amazing staff who do this work every single day. I encourage you to speak to some of them if you have questions. Staff, please raise your hand. You saw quite a few people outside, so thank you. It's my honor to work with you. Mention some of the sponsors. If you would be kind enough to check out the poster to look at all of our sponsors, many of whom are here today. This day couldn't happen without each of you, so we appreciate that. And with that, that's a perfect segue into CRI is committed to ending this pandemic. And Carrie mentioned a couple of things. There are three parts of that. One is treatment. Universal treatment. We serve over 8,000 people every day, making sure people have access to treatment. Treatment means access to health insurance and drugs. When people fall out of health insurance, we catch them. And with treatment comes undetectable viral loads. Vital for every positive person and vital for our communities to prevent new transmissions. We're part of the U equals U campaign, which some people might have heard of. Stands for undetectable equals untransmittable. More and more important. Second, Carrie talked about prevention. We run a prevention program that pays for PrEP, a daily pill called Truvada right now, but there are many other products that are on the way. For people who can't pay for PrEP, we're able to pay for it. That could mean a $25 copay, or it could actually mean $2,100 when a young person goes into a pharmacy, doesn't have insurance, or has a high deductible, which is very common now. $2,100 does not work. So CRI pays for that. We work with about 75 sites around the state of Massachusetts, and we're able to do that. This week in the New York Times op-ed piece, there was a piece by Peter Staley, who many of you know, and two collaborators, who called Truvada as good as the polio vaccine and the miracle of modern medicine. Along with the three things that we need to end this epidemic come the partnerships. One of the things that CRI does well is we work with about 1,400 clinics and hospitals and Outer Cape Health Services and AIDS service organizations and Provincetown AIDS Support Group and Cape Cod Hospital to make sure that people can go to their local pharmacy to pick up their drugs. Third, and Dr. Amy Colson, our research director, is going to talk to you a little bit more about this. We're continuing to do research. Carrie talked a little bit about it, testing new combinations of drugs, long-term injectables, the pathway to cure research, which isn't here, but we're part of that pathway and we're looking forward to that day. I asked Amy last week, is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And I said, she kind of was very thoughtful, didn't say much. And I said, okay, in your lifetime? And she said, yes. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that today and hopefully others. But that leads us to where you come in. We couldn't do this work without you. We haven't been able to do this work without you. You've helped us for the last 30 years do this work. You've been part of every drug by your support of us. You've helped us approve nearly 30 drugs for HIV. And we're not done yet. And we see you here and you're helping us. So thanks for everything you do. And this is Dr. Amy Colson, our research director, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about our research.
Thank you, Julie. So before I give you an update on what the CRI research team has been up to for the past year, I just wanted to take a moment to introduce an exciting new addition to our team, Dr. Meg Sullivan. So I'm sure many of you know Meg. She has been a distinguished HIV clinician and researcher at Boston Medical Center for the past 20 years, and we are just so pleased that she has come to join us. So I've been tasked with giving you an update on what the research team has been doing over the past year in 1 minute. So I'm going to try and hit the highlights here. 2 new drugs have been FDA approved in the past couple of months, Biktarvy and Simtuza just this month. And CRI, we're really proud to have contributed in a significant way to the studies, the registration studies that brought those 2 drugs to market. And as Carrie alluded to, research is changing a little now, and the focus is more alternative modes of delivery like implants and injectables, and also on providing opportunities for weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly dosing of HIV treatment and prevention. And CRI has recently completed a trial actually looking at injectable medications given every month for treatment. And we have now just started a trial of those same medicines looking to see if they can be administered every 2 months. And we are really proud to be the only site in Massachusetts that have offered these 2 studies. And we also, there's a new compound coming down the pipeline, which is really exciting. It's a novel drug class. It has unique properties that will allow it to be dosed weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, by implant, pill, or injection. And it's probably going to be useful for both treatment and prevention. And we are well poised to hop on board the next phase of clinical trials for that compound. And as Julie said, we remain quite committed to cure research, and we have been nurturing partnerships which will allow us, when cure research enters later phase clinical trials, to be a big part of that. So as you can see, over the past almost 30 years, we've been navigating this changing landscape of HIV research, and we are incredibly grateful to all of you, our sponsors, our clinical trial participants, for allowing us and really entrusting us to do this work. We certainly could not have done it without you, and thank you.
And now, when he was just a little boy, Jonathan was an 18-year-old Boston College student when he began volunteering for a very little-known organization long ago called Victory House. And in those years, the agency was very different. It sounds like it was a residential alcohol treatment center only for gay men, Vietnam vets, and those with histories of mental illness. What began as a 1-semester college internship for Jonathan evolved into a full-time, I guess 4-decade legacy that is not over, in which I have been able and an incredible friend and colleague watching Jonathan navigate a world requiring the most Renaissance skills of a Renaissance man who could navigate the content of what you do in substance use prevention and treatment, superb community organizing, incredible advocacy, fundraising like I've never seen, and this tireless leadership with staff, with clients, with politicians, with donors, and many, many others. Jonathan is really responsible for being on the forefront of defining housing first, low-threshold housing models for individuals who are homeless, treatment for those living with HIV and AIDS, substance use disorders, and hepatitis C. I think under Jonathan's, under Victory Program's umbrella, under Jonathan, they have established 30 vital, life-saving and life-affirming programs where no one is ever turned away. That's incredible. That doesn't exist except through Jonathan. Many, many specialized residential care programs providing housing, services, and substance use disorder treatment. In addition, in his spare time, Jonathan has managed to be a founding board member and the first board member of Mass Equality, one of the organizations that helped bring us equal marriage rights in the Commonwealth. And in all that other spare time he had, he founded the leading statewide policy and advocacy trade association called the Association for Behavioral Health Care. Jonathan and his husband, Mike McGuill, a former CRI board member, are a remarkable team, a remarkable family, and a remarkable friend to CRI, and they have been for decades. You embody everything the Dr. Cal Cohen Founders Award stands for, and I am so honored to present it to you.
Thank you all so much. This is like more fun than being on the love train. Crazy. So, where are my glasses? So, Alan Ball said it first, and I'm going to say it now. There is so much beauty in the world. Sometimes it's just too much. I almost can't take it, and my heart fills up like a balloon that's about to burst. Provincetown is our own spectacular beauty and really the most appropriate place to celebrate the magnificent CRI that brings such critical care to so many living with HIV and AIDS. And I want to acknowledge my most beauteous pals, Carrie Raymond and John Good, who do so much to bring the vision of CRI to P-Town. Absolutely. Julie Marston is the real deal, and she is in a class by herself. Totally. And if I had 1,000 red roses to place at her feet, it wouldn't suffice for what Julie and CRI do every day. No, I've got some. It's okay. But it matches my shirt, so maybe I should take them. You know, I knew a great community organizer who once said to me, if you want to see something move, follow what's moving. And Julie Marston is always moving AIDS care, like no one else. So everybody please follow her and CRI. And it's also really cool to get recognition named after Cal, who was my doctor for 25 years and probably saved my life 25 times. So that's really great. I want to just say, you know, all of the real beauties in my world are my sweetest pals here today who've come from near and far and hither and yon, and especially my devastatingly handsome gay veterinarian husband of nearly 25 years, Mike McGuill. I mean, really, how can you not fall in love with somebody? How can you not fall in love with somebody who takes care of little sick and injured animals? It's better than living with Snow White. So he hates it when I say that. But and you know, and then there's my beautiful 43 years at Victory Programs, and here's the deal. You know, I've been there since I was 18. It's the only job I've ever had. Slim resume me. You know, I was running a rambling brick row house in the South End residential shelter for homeless guys. Most were gay, deep into drugs and alcohol, later cocaine, crystal meth, opiates, bingo. You know, there was no money, and really out of sheer survival, I got this idea to start an umbrella organization where basically, essentially, small nonprofits could come under our umbrella, especially if they were having financial rocky times. I didn't actually know what I was doing. So my real secret to success is I always hire people way smarter than I am. And I just wanted to acknowledge the incredible caring, and daring team members of Victory Programs who are here today. Just say hi, everybody. And we have about 200 employees today who have, as Julie said, founded, created, repaired, managed, merged about 30 programs in 30 years. Very cool. The truth is, you know, I don't have an MBA. It just really came down to one basic thing. I just wanted to help my friends who are dying of AIDS. And so in the 70s, you know, there I am in college, and I'm working at Victory House, this rehab for men, I had a desk by the front door, and no one was allowed to drink in those days. And as the residents came home at night, my first job was literally to stand at the door and smell people's breath as they came in. I was like human breathalyzer, you know, like one of those German Shepherd narc dogs at the airport. So anyway, you know, today Victory serves about 2,000 people, women, men, gay, trans-identified. But we started like CRI and the Boston Living Center and the AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod that Joe Carlio runs here in P-Town so magnificently. And we did it because lives were devastated, and it was the Holocaust. And for years, the world was partying away while we buried a generation of the most beautiful, beloved beings the world has ever known. The poet Paul Manette once described the death of all these men and women as tossing handfuls of diamonds into the wild surf. And, you know, it was like the cars were passing by and you wanted to jump into the street and stop the cars and say, can't you see the terrible accident that's happening here? It was like nobody would listen. And, you know, I know lots of accidents happen to all of us, and there's no competition for any one of us who's suffered the most traumas. But I want to tell you about 3 accidents that happened to me that really are part of my history at Victory Programs, Boston and Provincetown, that really shaped my little life. The first was October 15th, 1981, 4:30 in the afternoon, Thursday at 566 Mass Avenue. And the date, the time, the place, and every detail is very clear to me because that's the day I died, so to speak. At least it was the death of the innocent John Scott, and maybe, you know, maybe the beginning of a new warrior that, you know, whatever I am today. But anyway, I was a kid, and it was my first big job out of college. I was this shelter manager and starting my shift, and 3 men from the street, I didn't know, kicked in the door, and in this really horrific, nightmare, ill-fated robbery attempt, they resulted in a lot of people being assaulted and brutalized. The big guy with the big gun, Saturday Night Special it's called, pushed the gun right here into the center of my chest, said, "Now you're gonna die," and point blank pulled the trigger, fired, and that's all I saw. Fire go through my body from here, and it blew out my back. And, you know, sidebar, getting shot is a lifelong heavy trip to reconcile. You know, I do sort of have lived my life since then with comparing every experience with, is this worse than getting shot or is this better? But however, on the bright side of getting shot, it gave me like this really great original pickup line at T-Dance. I could say, hey, if you come home with me, I'll show you my bullet holes. So, nice try, didn't always work, but you know, and the second thing about getting shot is you find out your last thought on leaving planet Earth. And, you know, they say your life passes before your eyes like a really fast movie, or the Buddha comes to you and you get the answer to all of life's mysteries, or walk to the white light. None of those things happened to me at all. For me, all I could think of as I was lying there bloody and unable to breathe was, God, why did I wear this new shirt to work today? So, gay fashionista me. But seriously, getting shot really cemented my destiny in Boston, and it was decision time. fight or flight, you know, run away or stay. And under the circumstances with flying bullets, both are really reasonable options. But I really chose to stay and fight hard for victory programs. And, you know, from the trauma, I really couldn't handle the big world anymore. I wore a lot of glitter. That's what how I chose to channel it. But I could at least try and keep a little world called victory under my watch safe, and I really have clung to that for many years. The second thing that happened to me was in 1987. I went to the local LGBTQ health center for an HIV test, and what is probably the single longest world's record for procrastination on picking up an HIV test result, 2 years later, I went back, and of course it was positive. And in '89, there was just nothing medically, but there was this really cool, extraordinary thing happening that was kind of spiritual in our community when all the hope you have is a hand to hold. It's really the most profound medicine on earth, and I hooked up with Ann Webster's Mind Body Group and Northern Lights Alternatives and A Course in Miracles and hay rides and marches on Washington and ACT UP with its die-ins in front of the White House. And to this day, I have to just tell you this, to this day, my favorite demonstration of all time was at the San Francisco Mall. It's now Nordstrom's, but then it was the Emporium. Some of you may know it. And they just fired a store clerk because they had AIDS. And 1,000 of us happened to be at the AIDS conference downtown, and spontaneously led by ACT UP San Francisco, we took over Market Street. We marched to Market, to the Emporium Mall, where they have these cascading glass escalators on the interior. We piled people high on every escalator. We stopped them. Store clerks were panicked. They were locking doors. We were so scary, you know, and all these raging with anger queer people because nobody was listening to us. Our friends were dying. And from all sides, we were throwing confetti and chanting on every tier of the Emporium Mall. We're here, we're queer, and we're not going shopping. And I love gay people. I love any people when they do things like that. It's the best. So enter Provincetown. You know, we hear people call this town in such glowing terms. It's the healing place, it's the touchstone, and it, you know, it is outrageously beautiful and hypnotic because for me, everything here is in constant motion. The sea, the wind, the leaves, the birds, the shifting light, the boys on the bicycles, everything's moving, moving, moving. And, you know, just standing still in this town sometimes is like this magical sensory orgy. So, but the beauty here goes far beyond that. And if anyone here has not seen the newly installed and newly, like 3 weeks ago, AIDS Memorial at Town Hall, go, go, go. In 1983 and onward, people literally came to this town to die because they had nowhere to go and no one else was taking care of them. So, you know, every day the van rides from P-Town to Boston, taking people to hospitals, the delivered meals, the pet walkers. And, you know, when people are dying, it's a vigil round the clock. And there was almost a town law that said no one with AIDS in P-Town will spend the night alone. You know, at times there is so much beauty in the world, I almost can't take it. So, you know, etched in this memorial, it describes how in '83 P-Town was a first responder to the AIDS crisis in the country. And on one side there's this really beautiful, strange phrase etched into the monument. The monument is called A Unique Moment in the Living Ocean. It's just beautiful. And on the other side is a collective poem that Marie Howe and Michael Cunningham and others all added to. But I'm going to just read the first few lines. It goes, Steve's holding Jerry, though he's already gone. Marie's holding John, gone. Maggie's holding her John, gone. Carlos and Darren holding another Michael, gone. And I'm holding Wally, who's going. So visit the memorial, throw yourselves on it if you have to. It's like beyond the rainbow beautiful. The beauty in the world I almost can't take is what happened here in Provincetown to two young, handsome, sweetheart, inseparable lovers, John Riley and Kevin Clark. So John Riley was this like wild, rebellious, tall, dark, and gorgeous guy. Kevin was the calm, staid one, the P-Town's veterinarian, tall, blonde, and gorgeous. And, you know, the two were never far apart. John was estranged and disowned from his family for being gay. But one fun fact about John, he had one of the largest known collections of Fiesta wear. It's like Depression-era dinnerware made like in confetti rainbow colors. And John hunted Brimfield and antique stores like he was, for Fiesta, like he was like a gay safari pottery hunter. And, you know, one day John discovered like this impossible to find Rose Fiesta teapot in the South End's Emerald City Antique Store, and, you know, walking out of the door with the daylight clutching the teapot like it was his firstborn, you know, it was his prized possession. In '87, he got violently ill, fast and furiously, pneumocystis pneumonia, intubated. 2 weeks later, he died. But before dying, he told Kevin verbally, not in writing, his last wishes for his disposition of his things and his remains. No one in his family visited John while he was dying, but after he died, they swooped in fast, on the scene, demanded everything, personal possessions, including his ashes. And here's what happened in P-Town when the word got out. One morning, really quietly, this undercover operation, all these local P-Town cars went to Kevin's home on Allerton Street. And all the people got out of the cars and they started packing the Fiesta ware in boxes. And they put them back in the cars and they drove away. And throughout this town, people hid John's favorite things, his dinner plates under beds and his cups and saucers and closets and soup bowls and garages. And, you know, until the coast was clear and they could bring them back to Kevin. And just a quick sidebar, you know, every 4th of July we had a party called Esther, and it was really zany and crazy and wild Herring Cove beach party, boys in bathing caps and not much else. And a few women too, not much else. And we were all doing these Busby Berkeley, you know, splish splash circles and kicks, and the grand finale, of course, was everyone took off their bathing suits and mooned the cheering crowds on the beach. We called it Buns to the Beach. And we collected money, and all the money we collected in those days we gave to Kevin. But the real unique moment in the living ocean is this for all of us. And I believe it was the first AIDS-related lawsuit, groundbreaking. GLAAD led it. I think Ben Klein was the litigator, but the case was Clark versus Riley. Kevin fought the Riley family through the courts for John's remains, and he won. And the judge proclaimed that verbal last wishes needed to be honored like any written consent. And for gay people in the 80s, this was so huge. And Kevin got John's ashes back and put them where John had requested. And when Kevin himself died a few years later, by his bedside was a Rose Fiesta teapot holding John. So they were never far apart. I know, it's a lot. It's a lot. So and this is going to be a lot for a lot of people here, but the beauty I almost can't take is when I think what happened to my really good pal Keith Desmond, the first person in '85 I knew really well who died of AIDS. And, you know, again, enter a unique moment in the living ocean. Keith had two best friends here, Tom Sokol and Rick Saul. They both died in the late 90s of AIDS too, but they were fun and loving and generous and guys and very famous for their late night hot tub parties. Another story. Anyway, Keith went everywhere with those guys, and one day in '85, Tom and Rick pulled me out a tea dance, and they were so excited because they just bought this small piece of land on Creek Hill Road, which was pretty undeveloped then, and we climbed the tree, and they showed me what their view would be of the future view of their new home. Well, Keith started to rapidly decline, wasting syndrome we called it, and Tom was the architect, and he brought over to show Keith in his hospital room the blueprints of the new house, and he laid them out on Keith's bed in the first page. You have the entrance and the living room, and oh my God, great views, and kitchen and dining room, and then you go up the stairs to even better, greater views, and there was the master suite, and on the other side was a box on the blueprints that Tom had embossed in bold marker with the words, Keith's bedroom. And Keith was so proud of this friendship, he told everyone his friends were building a bedroom just for him. And one day, although Keith was failing, he asked me to drive him to Provincetown to see how the construction was going on his bedroom. Anyway, a few weeks later, in the middle of the night, I woke up and began writing. My mom was a writer for the New York Times, so, the sound of a typewriter, if anyone remembers what that is really comforting to me. And the creative process is otherworldly, so, I just was really like a stenographer listening to all these voices saying, you write that down. And without barely editing a word, I sent it to Rudy Kickel at Bay Windows. He was the arts editor, and always expecting another rejection. Rudy called me and he told me I'm going to be a published poet. Yay! So this is for my friend Keith, and that's the title, Keith, and it goes like this. One day he felt better, or at least well enough to make the fall drive all the way to Provincetown just to sit alone a last time against the raw timber that someday would be the polished living room of Tom and Rick's new home, overlooking those dune grass hills to the beach at Herring Cove. On a clear day, you can see the smokestacks in Plymouth, Keith said, as he must have seen that silent afternoon, taking in the panoramic ocean view through the skeletal walls of his friend's new home. They're building a bedroom for me, Keith said. Then a thin, bare frame as unprotected and exposed as suddenly he was at 33. I'm an old man too soon, with sky leaking through every harmless open space and wind wandering gently around in circles like a brave young soul leaving home for the first time, but looking as hard as he can. Take it from me, losing a friend is far worse than getting shot. Losing a friend is worse than living with HIV for 30 years. And losing a friend is worse than my third accident that happened to me 18 months ago when I was diagnosed with metastatic cancer. That, physically unbearable, barbaric chamber of horrors called chemo, radiation, and surgeries, all me. But on the bright side of cancer, we're taught, our greatest aspiration is love, and its companions, kindness, tenderness, peace and all those things. But I discovered something bigger. It's this really cute 3-letter word that encompasses all the wonder and mystery of life. And it's awe. And awe requires neither definition nor explanation. Awe is what the people in this town did. No one with AIDS was left alone a night in Provincetown. Awe is Keith's bedroom, and a rose fiesta teapot kept safe, and everything the Town Hall AIDS Memorial feels when you touch its gorgeous, rippling obsidian ocean surface. Awe is the support group I go to at Boston Medical Center, almost exclusively grandmothers from the islands, Trinidad, Martinique, Barbados. And in comes little whining me with all of my, ailments, and facing those stoic spiritual grandmothers, all dealing heroically with cancer. One more lesson in humility. Awe is when I couldn't take it anymore and barely surviving months of all that pain after round 1 of chemo and radiation just to be told I had to do it again. And that's when Ema, this 75-year-old granny from St. Vincent's, grabbed my right hand and said, "Child," isn't it great to be 60 and have someone call you child? "Child, this is life." And she grabbed my left hand and said, "Child, this is death." And then she put my hands together and she said, "And everything in between is the forest. And every day, every one of us has to wake up and find our way through the forest no matter where it takes us, because that's what the living do." So, to all of my gorgeous, gay, straight compadres here and there and hither and yon, all of us in our forest through the briar and brambles and branches and the dim and the dark and the shade, we found a clearing, a sort of glade, a unique moment in the living ocean with all its brilliant light and foghorns and the miles we've spent together summer after summer, strolling up and down Commercial Street from one end to the other. And even when we stop still, the land itself keeps moving. The shimmer, the light, the sea, the wind, the leaves, the birds, the boys on the bikes, our sandy, sun-drenched, moon-drenched awe. The Emerald City of Provincetown. Once an interviewer asked Bette Midler what she thought about death, and she said, "Well, honestly, mostly I think about sequins." And sometimes, so do we. So I want to end where I start, and Alan Ball said it first, and I'm saying it now. I guess I could be pretty ticked off at all the things that's happened to me. But it's hard to stay mad when there is so much beauty in the world. Sometimes I feel like I'm seeing it all at once, and it's too much. My heart fills up like a balloon that's about to burst, and then I remember to relax and stop trying to hold on to it. And then it flows through me like rain, and I can't feel anything but gratitude for every single moment of my stupid little life. Thank you, amazing CRI, outstanding Julie Marston, and all of you big, beautiful hearts here who cared so deeply for each ruby, emerald, diamond friend we lost in the wild surf, and those of us still on shore, looking as hard as we can at all that awe, and sometimes sequins too. Thank you.